We have lots of freedoms here. We have Big Gretchen Whitmer, our governor. We also have a fully blue Congress at every level. We have a huge union state, as you know. We have legal weed. We have spaces that are considering legal psilocybin. I'm sure that's going to be down the road soon. We have had an excellent economy over a period of time when most states have not. We have made headway in LGBTQ rights. We have made headway in the rights for abortion, for marriage and stuff like that, and for the right to affirm your own gender. The marijuana is a weird sticking point that is definitely a loser nationally. I don't think the Republicans can win this one. People like smoking weed. Lifelong Republicans love weed. It's just a thing. People like smoking weed. You like drinking. You like smoking weed. It's a thing. They're not different. Here's what you don't know about marijuana is the name of this video from Matt Walsh. And do you think he might fearmonger about marijuana? So I don't know that Matt's ever done any drugs, but if confronted with any questions, we can talk honestly about drug use. Well, I gotta use some drugs though. Gotta use them. There we go. Let's see what Matt has to say. What's up, I Like Pie?
Shortly after an 18-year-old opened fire on children at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas last year, killing 19 students and 2 teachers, the New York Times published a lengthy front-page article on the killer's background. And one line in the Times report didn't last very long before...
It's interesting that this is a shooting that we can use politically.
An editor deleted it from the article without explanation. The sentence in question quoted one of the gunman's co-workers at Wendy's as saying that, quote, he would often talk about how much he despised his mother and grandmother, whom he told her did not let him smoke weed or do what he wanted. Mm-hmm. It was never clear why that particular line was deleted. Most likely they wanted to push gun confiscation instead, and it kind of confused the narrative. Mm-hmm. But in any event, the New York Times didn't want to talk about the shooter's marijuana use. If the blogger Alex Berenson hadn't spotted the change, it's likely no one would have ever noticed it. What we do know is that if the shooter in Uvalde was indeed a pothead, then there are a lot of other examples just like it. Many other mass shooters from Parkland to Aurora to Tucson to Southern.
So mass shooters, it'll make you the weed, the reefer madness. It's going to give you the reefer madness. I'm going to smoke. Now, it would be fascinating if you just go on a full prohibition run, because the obvious rebuttal that most people come up with at first is like, well, what about alcohol, which I don't drink a lot of, but we have it here. Maybe we'll get crossed today on stream. Who knows? Because we're talking about prohibition. You know how much of a bad boy I like to be. Just so bad. Most people are like, well, alcohol is obviously worse societally. Like, we all have individual anecdotal evidence of alcohol being bad, and then broader statistical proof of alcohol being, related to deaths and harm and domestic abuse and, all sorts of things. Just in self-inflicted abuse. It's a clearly much more harmful substance that we allow in public for public consumption at rates that people obviously, can't handle themselves. Just a little sip. Yeah, I don't really want to drink. A little sip.
Lowland Springs were reported marijuana users. That dovetails with research showing that young people who use marijuana were more than twice as likely to commit acts of violence. To just give one example, the American Journal of Psychiatry published a meta-analysis of...
Yeah, this is absolutely so fucking dumb.
...several large-scale studies 3 years ago.
Matt right now.
Do your children enjoy jazz music?
Uh-oh.
For I am here to tell you that Cab Calloway...
The conclusion was this, quote, these results demonstrate a moderate association between cannabis use and physical violence. Cannabis use in this population is a risk factor for violence.
Interesting. So I bet what you'll find is that is correlative, not causative.
Go.
Look at this guy. He smokes a joint offset. Because, weed is accessible for people in the lower economic brackets in ways that, usually rich people have higher end drugs and, more like pills and stuff. They're on the go. They're doing business. You know what I mean? And so a lot of those people are, subjected to situations that cause the violence, which is usually poverty, high population density, bad housing, etc. And weed is just, happens to be around in these cases. But it's a moderate risk factor, which is not one that I would say causes it. I don't know. I mean, you could do much better studies on this, I'm sure, but I don't think that you would find that people become more violent when they get high. I think people are much calmer when they're high. I think people are much more like, well, what's the point of the violence? Why do I want to do this? My grandma did one marijuana for her cataracts and ended up eating the face off of everyone in her care facility. Yeah, but your grandma was infected with the sickness.
Now, you never hear about these studies, probably for the same reason that the New York Times censored itself for mentioning marijuana in the context of the Uvalde shooting.
Everyone
in
who has ever
elite circles, talking about the consequences of marijuana use is unpopular. Mm-hmm. Anything that discourages people from smoking more weed is also disfavored.
Mm-hmm. You're going to lose this one to capitalism, though. Like, I'm not really worried about this one. We don't have to worry about weed that much. It does matter in the polls for your state elections, but, like, eventually we're going to have weed.
It's almost like...
in fact... I think in an effort to get young people to try to vote for him, he will try to federally legalize weed in this upcoming election to try to swing back. I think they're going to use this bargaining chip finally. I think it's going to happen. I think you have enough states, like southern states are starting to come around on it and stuff. Ohio just fucking passed it. I think you're going to see a federal descheduling of weed coming up real soon.
They want the masses to be drugged and passive, which might explain why the cigar tax in New York is 75%, while the marijuana tax is less than 15%.
Aww.
Regardless of what exactly...
The cigar tax? That's pretty sad.
...explains that discrepancy. The PR effort to push marijuana has obviously been successful over the past decade. 24 states have passed some form of legalization or...
That is half. That's half of them. So, yeah, I mean, we're right there. You're also going to see essentially over half of the states adopt it during the next election, I guarantee it. And it's going to, like, we're just tipping the scales. Just legalize it all the way around. People will chill out a little bit. It absolutely helps right-wingers talk about things they don't want to talk about. We've experienced it firsthand. It is very good for them to smoke a little weed, chill the fuck out, stop drinking so much. It has helped my mom. We talked about the drinking problems in America. I mean, it's helped my mom cessate some drinking because she's like, well, I already feel a little happy. feel good. Because I think, I don't think she has thought about it much, but what started as a habit became self-medication. How are you going to be anti-weed in 2023? Well, it's Matt Walsh. He's anti-whatever you're supposed to be for.
Decriminalization of...
Matt Walsh is a great litmus test. If we're agreeing with Matt Walsh, we have to understand why. We have to be like, okay, well, what the fuck is going on here?
Marijuana. And because slippery slopes are real, and anybody who uses the term slippery slope fallacy is lying to you.
Oh, the fallacy that's a fallacy isn't one right now when we watch this video. Okay.
The decriminalization movement did not end there. Mm-hmm. Instead, it progressed far beyond marijuana, as it was always destined to do. 3 years ago, on the heels of the race riots following the overdose of George Floyd, Oregon became...
Following the overdose of George Floyd. This guy will be a scumbag until the day he is put in the ground, dude.
The first state in the country to decriminalize the possession of all illegal drugs. Not just...
God, I hope he dies before I do. I just want to be able to see it happen. Be like, yep, we made it a little bit... One day past him.
Marijuana, but every illegal drug. Nearly 60% of voters in the state approved this measure, as Measure 110, along with a separate measure that legalized the use of hallucinogenic mushrooms for therapy. And the idea was that the laws against heroin and meth and other drugs...
Matt Walsh, 3 shooters used pot. We must look into this. Also Matt Walsh, almost every shooter mainlined conservative talking points. I'm sure that's a coincidence. True. Yep.
Drugs were counterproductive and oppressive and, of course, racist. So they had to go.
Some of them were racist. Yeah. They did have to go.
And hopes were high. As Vox reported at the time, quote, Given that decriminalization is so far untried in the U.S., it's difficult to say how it would play out. In that sense, Measure 110 would create a real-time experiment for Oregon and the rest of the country. Well, not
Oregon's
long
doing great, by the way.
afterwards, though, we started to see the results of this experiment. Problems began to emerge, we might say. In 2022, a local news station embedded with the head of a Portland drug interdiction task force, and here's what they learned. Watch.
Back at the office, Ferguson is willing to show us drugs and guns seized recently in 2 separate cases. Those little blue pills are fentanyl.
Don't even look at them. They're gonna get you. Oh fuck! All the cops start fainting. Oh no!
It's
fentanyl.
Everywhere. It's everybody we contact. I have a couple of cases that are back-to-back cases we did this week.
That's right. If you go buy weed at your local dispensary, shout out Skymint, sponsor me. You'll get fentanyl. Tiger Cat, you just got here and first time even looking at my chat ever once, Tiger Cat, and just seeing fentanyl through the Twitch screen has caused you to have breathing problems. We need to root this out. I think the best thing we should do is shut down the borders, ban the Mexicans, obviously, and weed. These are the things. Yep. Why, you ask? Well, Oregon has blue pills.
Little blue pills
They have 'em.
are fentanyl.
And it's
Nuke them all. We got to fuck Palestine because of the fentanyl. I think we found a solution to the cop issue. We should sprinkle this on every cop, personally. If every cop isn't sprinkled with fentanyl, literally, along with your black block, 1 blue fentanyl pill in a slingshot. Ping! Hits them, they die immediately.
Everywhere. It's everybody we contact. I have a couple of cases that are back-to-back cases we did this week. And in each case, it's fentanyl possession and stolen handguns. And this is almost everything we do right now.
What does this have to do with weed?
How much does Measure 110 have to do with it?
Measure 110 has everything to do with it.
Ferguson said because Measure 110 reduced possession for small amounts of drugs, including oxycodone, the drug business has flourished.
I disagree.
The fentanyl pills are counterfeit OxyContin pills. And by decriminalizing that, it's basically legitimized criminal organization.
Did that say $5 or 500? Like, no way this is $5.
And the
What a
drug
deal.
possession, use, and
Sign
sale
me up.
is just rampant with very little consequences, and it's taken away our tools as police officers to sort of interdict that.
Reported drug
Police officers.
offenses in Portland dropped from 880 the year before Measure 110 went into effect to 364 the year after.
The police are saying this. So fewer drug offenses. So that's good, right? This is fewer. This is fewer drug offenses. We've cut drug offenses in half. No.
Police still do have some tools, and Ferguson was involved in a bust last June in which investigators found 500 fentanyl pills along with 44 firearms, 2 of which were machine guns.
So? America or whatever? Can't they have that? Let them have them. Aren't you? I thought you guys were big 2A'ers. Can't they just have that? Every American should have that without any fucking. They don't need to get checked at all for this. That seems like a reasonable. Look at this. I think every person should have one of these and carry them around. Let their kids use them.
And 1,000 grams of methamphetamine.
Okay, so
Can I ask a question about why
The
Matt
machine
Walsh's
gun and 1,000 grams of methamphetamine.
Matt Walsh's logo looks like the waste management logo? You look like a you look like a garbage truck guy. Who chose this? This looks like shit. It's just waste management.
okay,
Here. Why would you do this? This is just dump trucks.
So Measure 110, the officer says, is the reason
Well, he has a dumpster fire. Ooh. Zing!
that fentanyl and
Zinged him. I don't know why I made it so big, chat.
stolen handguns and machine
We'll
guns
keep them big for now. This is a big video.
are flooding Oregon. Measure 110 has everything to do with it, he tells a reporter.
Go.
Well, now 3 years after
Did they raid a World War II museum? Like bust in, plant meth, take Grandpappy's M1 bag? Yeah.
Measure 110 was passed, voters are tired of it. It only took 3 years.
voters.
Polls now show that a majority of residents in Oregon want to recriminalize hard drugs. After they just decriminalized it, now they want to recriminalize it, and a ballot measure doing so is expected next year.
I don't think it'll pass.
And that's because, predictably, decriminalizing cocaine and heroin and everything else has led to nothing less than a breakdown of society in Oregon.
So along with decriminalizing things like cocaine and heroin, you have to do other things to help the people that are addicted to those things. Specifically give them health care and usually, a dignified living space, access to survival needs. But this is something that Matt Walsh does not think they need or deserve. So yeah. Liberal half measures are a problem, but the solution is not to undo the half measure, it's to do a full measure. You know? To take a step forward, you actually have to move both feet. So you're standing there fully, in stride. So you just gotta toot toot. But he just always wants to take 2 steps back, man.
To the extent that there was a society there before this. This week, the Wall Street
To the
Journal
extent that there was a society, yeah. Oh my, Portland, no.
published an extensive analysis into the effect of Measure 110 on
No
the
society
state.
out there.
It's a report that everybody should read, as it entirely annihilates the case for drug legalization. I don't think there's ever been a side of an issue that has been this thoroughly and completely debunked, using not just studies or speculation, but real world. Now we see in the real world what actually happens when all drugs are legalized, and it is a disaster.
Decriminalized.
And yet still, almost all the pro-drug legal...
If they were legalized, it would be even different. Legalization would mean that you could sell it and shit. I think you need both. Although you'd also have tax on it, but you gotta couple this with the ability for people to get health care for this, because addiction is not what you want. What you're looking for is not to just put people away for health problems. Most people are self-medicating because they don't have access to health care. Like a lot of people I know that started with Oxy, for instance, that was pain management. A lot of people got into. I could have been very susceptible to this. I love fucking taking a little Oxycodone. I don't snort it like the boys that OD'd that I knew growing up did. But you just take a pill every once in a while to help your aching ankle at work, and it hurt. It feels a lot better. I can still think of the warming sensation that sort of moves through you when you take one of these things and get rid of the pain. Now I can't imagine being addicted to it, and needing something like that, and then harder and harder. So yeah, it's got to be a problem, man. That sounds tough. Way different than some of the other kinds of addictions that people deal with, in my opinion. This one's just hardwired in our brain to just fuck it up. So yeah. But you can't criminalize this. You can't just victimize people who are already victims with the fucking strong-arm police shit, exerting violence on them all the time, dehumanizing them. The fuck is the point of that? It's so fucking, I got spanked as a kid, so everyone else should get spanked kind of mentality shit. And of course, that's what the fuck is happening here.
Are simply ignoring it. They've gotten what they wanted in Oregon and to a lesser extent all across the country. But you notice that they're not out touting the success of the policy they advocated for. Maybe you noticed that. And that's because there is no success. It has been a catastrophe. If you own a firearm, then you need to check out.
Oh my God. Nice ad, bro. 2 minutes? 2 minutes? A full fucking 2-minute ad.
reports that as a result of the law, quote, people sprawled on sidewalks and using fentanyl with no fear of consequence have become a common sight in cities such as Eugene and Portland. From May of 2022 to May of this year, the number of fatal overdoses in the state increased by more than 20%.
Okay, so are you worried about the people that are overdosing? Are you worried about the people that are overdosing? If I tell you what is wrong with the people that are overdosing and how to fix it, are you going to agree that that's a good course to take? Because that's always the problem we run into when we talk to Republicans about this. It's like you need to decriminalize it and give people health care and give people housing. If you just did health care, that would take care of a lot of it. But if you did housing and health care, all these societal problems that you worry about would start fizzling away. People would be able to save their money. People would be able to have dignity and safety. But of course, they just want to victimize everybody. Took a Vicodin once to deal with a busted knee, and it was magical to not be in pain for the first time in my life. I'm right there with you. Without medical symptoms to help people, they will turn to self-medicating and escaping their lives. Prison is not scary to someone in agony who cannot afford food. Right. It's, and people deal with a lot more pain than I've dealt with in my life. And I've dealt with a large handful of physical pain due to my fucking ankles. But you know what people are going through.
To 1,500 overdoses. That is the third highest jump in the entire country.
Mm-hmm. Do you care about that, though? It's not just their access to these drugs.
Police in Eugene, Oregon report that this year there have been 858 calls for overdoses. In 2020, the number was 438, which was already high. And now it's double. The whole point of Measure 110 was to force these people to go to rehabilitation services instead of jail. But of course, that hasn't worked either. Quote, some 6,000 tickets have been issued for drug possession since decriminalization went into effect in 2021, but just 92 people have called and completed assessments needed to connect them to services, according to the Journal. The only penalty for those who don't call is a $100 fine, which is rarely enforced.
Okay, but you see, they can't afford $100. It's only $100 fine. What do you mean only $100? They just don't fucking understand anything. Oh my God. These are such... the people that write these laws have fucking $1 million homes in suburbia, have never known a guy that got addicted, has never fucking been at work and been in pain for 12 hours and needed every fucking penny of that and couldn't go home. Never fucking worried about $100 in their life, man. How are you gonna tell people to go get help, but or else fucking? I hate liberals for making right-wingers sound ever reasonable. These half-measure bullshit things fuck it up. They let right-wingers say "Whoa, look! I said they're doing under a false name. Yeah, look, they're doing it." Well, not even trying hard. Is he trying to call cannabis a hard drug in this video? Well, it's he's not talking about weed anymore. Matt Walsh believes a fine should ruin your life. Your life should be ruined for doing drugs, as if it wasn't fucked enough, right?
So, in sum, Oregon's decision to decriminalize all
drugs... It helps that Matt is also lying. That's true.
...drugs has been an abject and totally
predictable... It went up during the pandemic and it's down since. That makes sense.
...predictable disaster.
Oregon is 26th for overdose deaths in the country. Nice.
It turns out that when you invite people to do drugs whenever and wherever they want, you end up with a lot more people doing drugs whenever and wherever they want.
Yeah, and he just did this 4
advocates
hours
for
ago.
decriminalization have always claimed that somehow decriminalizing drug use will not lead to more drug use, as though the law has no effect on people's behavior. But that flies in the face of everything we've observed about human behavior since the dawn of civilized society.
So as a non-heroin user, if it were legal, I wouldn't be excited to go try it. Like that wouldn't be is druggy a slur? I mean, it's just someone who does drugs, and usually they're a little guy, little scamp. I don't know.
Okay. To put it simply,
it's probably used as a pejorative for people that just need help, I'm sure.
Laws matter. When the law allows a certain behavior,
I usually think of the kid in high school who just had all the pills or whatever, had all the drugs.
You get more of that behavior. Like, it's not hard to figure out this equation. It's actually very simple. And that's why, unless we want a lot more overdose deaths and illegal guns in major cities.
Interesting. The illegal guns and the overdose deaths. But does he care? Like, what are the answers to these things? Just prohibit people from the drug that they were already doing. Like, well, if you tell them to stop, okay. Do you understand what you're asking these people?
We should be taking a very close look at all forms of drug decriminalization, including the more limited and efforts that we've seen across the country.
Uh-huh.
As I mentioned earlier, weed is legal in most places now.
Have you ever overdosed on weed, dog? It's working out great. What? How's weed working for states? Record fucking profits. It's been so good for Michigan.
Is there any evidence that it's making anything better?
Yes.
Can we look at like the promises that were made by the weed legalization side?
Colorado and Michigan had surpluses in their first several years of having weed. Like, it's so huge.
And look at their promises. Like, has any of that panned out?
Just asking questions.
I mean, by the naked eye, it certainly seems to, rather than helping anything, it seems to be contributing to our social decay.
It's fascinating how little evidence he's providing suddenly. He's just sort of gesturing like, oh, has it?
It has a demoralizing effect, at the very least, to walk through any city in America now and smell the stench of weed everywhere, with people walking around stoned anywhere you go.
I love the vibe of everyone's high where I'm at. I love it. I think everyone is so much more chill. If you go into a bar and you smell weed, it's awesome.
And I say this, by the way, as someone who, for a time, believed that weed, not any other drug, should probably be, just be legalized or at least decriminalized, as much as I personally don't like the drug.
Mm-hmm. He personally doesn't like the drug. Personally, of course.
There was a time when I bought into that same idea, but I can look around at our cities and smell the stench everywhere and see people high on drugs everywhere. And I can ask myself, has this made society better?
Fuck yeah.
Or has it made it worse?
100% better. Matt Walsh gets demoralized by the smell of weed. Another W for cannabis. Makes me want to smoke more.
I mean, that's the question everyone should be asking themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, aside from the naked eye test, what does the data say? For a lot of reasons, it's hard to measure the precise impact of marijuana decriminalization on people.
Newton, my boot! Thanks for the 3 months. Can't spell weed without W. True.
Quality of life. There are so many variables, including the decision by leftist DAs to stop enforcing a bunch of other laws.
Leftist DAs. The leftist district attorneys? Name one. Name one. Leftists.
And because of that, it's difficult to ascribe any particular blame to one specific policy or another. It's all kind of like a jumbled mess.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be sure, a lot of jurisdictions that have legalized or decriminalized marijuana have seen significant increases in crime. New York legalized cannabis in 2021, for example, and then immediately saw its overall crime index jump by more than 22%.
During lockdown? Like pandemic shit? 2021, 2020? Shut up.
Along the same lines, after Washington's Supreme Court struck down the state's drug laws, effectively legalizing all drugs until legislators could fix the problem, crime spiked. Washington's rate of violent crimes jumped
The cops.
from 337 per 100,000 people in 2021 to more than 375 per 100,000 people.
So I can think of math in my head. So that was not a significant increase. That was 0.032% or something like that. That's crazy. Can't wait for my honeymoon across 3 legal states. I'll smoke an extra fat one just for the shit. Let's go.
In the following year. Now, there's no easy way to determine with absolute certainty at this stage what role drug legalization is playing in all of these numbers specifically. There have been some attempts at drilling this down. A couple of years ago, analysts at the Justice Research and Statistics Association looked at the impact of marijuana legalization or decriminalization in 11 states, including Washington, Arizona, California, Colorado, Nebraska, and others. And they did this by speaking to local officials and law enforcement personnel. And
Law enforcement personnel. Damn, we should ask the pigs about stuff. We should definitely poll the pigs on what the citizens want.
and hearing what they had to say.
They're not even humans. They're pigs.
And the researchers found that after Washington State legalized recreational marijuana use in 2020, arrests for both the possession and distribution of heroin and methamphetamine increased significantly. And remember, we were always told that the whole thing about the gateway drug is a myth. It's a fallacy. It's a myth.
It is a myth. I've never been to my dispensary and been offered heroin. There's no heroin at the dispensary, Matthew. There's sweatshirts and lighters. Sometimes they have little candies. They got cool little grinders with little guys on them, little scrapers and stuff. But yeah, buy a hat.
It's not what the numbers show.
What did the
Meanwhile, in
numbers show?
Colorado, which also decriminalized pot a decade ago, the researchers found that, quote, respondents in particular reported an increase in the homeless population from individuals moving to the state for jobs in the marijuana industry that failed to materialize. Other concerns expressed.
Wow. Whoa. A failure of capitalism reported as a bad thing marijuana did? Incredible. Sounds like cops had more resources to deal with actually dangerous drugs after they stopped hassling people with a bit of weed. Yeah, maybe.
Expressed by interviewees related to criminal behavior associated with the marijuana business, such as attempts to steal marijuana and take over selling from locals. In Oregon, there were similar.
He's reading something someone wrote for him and is getting tired of the story. You can hear it in his voice.
Concerns. Quote, an Oregon respondent reported a 55 to 60% increase in marijuana-related DUIs following marijuana decriminalization. Along the same lines, a separate research team from the University of Utah scrutinized crime data from Oregon, and they found that, quote, results provide some evidence demonstrating a crime-exacerbating effect of recreational marijuana legalization as reflected by substantial increases in the rates of multiple types of serious crime in Oregon relative to non-legalized states following legalization.
He can't even follow what the fuck he's reading right now. He's literally not absorbing any of it.
Including property and violent crime overall, as well as other crimes such as burglary, motor vehicle theft, larceny, and aggravated assault. Now, none of this is really particularly surprising, given that marijuana is a psychoactive drug.
Marijuana is a psychoactive drug. They say the word psycho, and they're like, whoa. It makes you psycho, dude. Sounds like someone who's high. Sounds like what you would think if you were high.
That's been linked to violent behavior. What is perhaps surprising, though,
There's
is
no data to suggest that smoking weed makes you violent. It's just not true.
that given what we know and don't know, several states are still pushing the decriminalization agenda. Ohio, for example, is set to decriminalize the drug in just a few weeks. And I want you to watch how local news is covering this. Watch.
Well, marijuana will be legal to buy and sell in the Buckeye State in just 24 days. But that
Fuck yeah!
doesn't mean that
That dispensary looks like shit, by the way. What the fuck? Fucking... What is the Burlington Coat Factory of weed stores? They got these vases off from a bargain bin. She's literally fucking
marijuana shops will be
crazy.
open
I've never
just
seen anything like
quite
this.
yet. Our
Y'all live like this? Couldn't be me.
Michael
Not my
Sandlin, he joins us
dispensary. Good
live from
gracious.
the East Side tonight. And Michael, I
you
understand
doing?
you spoke to a professor who kind of broke down the timeline until people can actually buy marijuana.
Yeah, Jeff, I spoke to Professor Brandon Cohen, who teaches multiple cannabis management classes at U Toledo. He said looking at how
Cannabis management classes.
things went in Michigan and Colorado, he expects it'll be a little over a year before we start seeing marijuana shops pop up in our local neighborhoods. Cool. He walked me through the process.
That's interesting. In Michigan, people were preloading. They were like, all right, we're going to have a dispensary. The day this is legal, we will have weed for you. Let's go. And we all did. Caffeine is a psychoactive drug. Should we ban that too? It's psychoactive. Psycho.
It's going to take to get there, saying that once issue 2 makes it through the legislature, it's passed off to the Department of Commerce, the same group that regulates and works with legal medical marijuana and liquor. They set all the rules and regulations for sale, which will take at least a few months. Once that's finished, they'll ask the public to submit proposals for businesses. And once those are reviewed and the best candidates are selected for
That was so fucking sad, dude. Get cones.
licenses, we just start seeing
Oh man, look how fucking illicit that is. Look how illicit that is. Look, a wholesome little cob ran through. Guys, it's benign. Smoke weed or don't. It doesn't matter. It's cool. I like it a lot. Helps my appetite, helps me sleep, helps my creativity. It helps me I don't know. Just helps. I think it's good. It also has, you smoke a lot, you might get a cough. You might be like, oh man, I got a little phlegm. You might burn yourself with the hotness. Smoke to your leisure. I'm a professional. You can take edibles. You could vape. You also don't have to imbibe. That's fine too. You could be very occasional. Dude, my mom takes 2 hits and she's fucking done. If I gave her an ounce of weed, she'd have it all year.
businesses for recreational use start to pop up around Q4 of next year.
Smoking weed helped my anxiety and depression to the point that I can stop my meds. That's really nice. Some people get anxiety from smoking it, but I think it's usually the strain. Or that they went way too hard.
Now, if you vote...
Like, start small. Take 1 hit. Take 1 small edible. At first, you're going to be a lightweight, for sure.
For issue 2, on the ballot it says
like
these
shit.
new businesses will bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue.
It will.
And the report goes on like that for a few minutes longer, but you notice that they're not talking about how decriminalizing marijuana is going to make everybody more productive and happier members of society.
It absolutely will. The more we normalize it as well, the more that will happen. Just being high at work, fuck it. I don't care. Like, unless you're doing something like driving or whatever, but if you're just like a bank teller, you just counting money. If you're like a fucking you're bagging groceries, you're making burgers, smoke weed, man. Heavy machinery and surgery, don't. That's probably best not to. Something you gotta have really. You gotta use your brain a lot. You gotta have, gotta lock in. But there's professional athletes that say, they couldn't have played if they weren't high.
They're not claiming that it's going to make the state a better place to live, which is really...
People should not be drunk at work. No. It's not the same, though. That's what I mean. Like, it really just isn't the same. So you can't be too high, though. Like, I'm not saying, like, go get fucking blasted. It's not similar. No, it's not. It's quite dissimilar. It just isn't. It's similar in that it is a drug, but like it's like, the sensations are not similar. It affects totally different parts of your system. I would say mushrooms are closer to weed than weed is close to alcohol, and it's not really that close to mushrooms. At least 60% of us are high at work. I think it helps my focus. Like, as someone with ADHD, I think it really helps my focus. It can harm my focus but usually just in that, like, my ADHD wins for a moment and then I'm hyper-focused on a new thing, if that makes sense. Like, I'll look at my phone and I'll be like, well, now I'm in it. Damn, Lamar Jackson still had a good game. Hate it for me. You can keep getting drunk until you pass that. I mean, yeah, drinking is just so debilitating. It's like such a much steeper curve. I think a buzz is similar to being pretty high. Like, buzzed on alcohol. Being drunk is like just a steeper experience in my opinion. And I think I'm right. I'm 100% right. It's just so much easier to overdrink than it is to get way too high. And if you're way too high, I've greened out one time. I've greened out one time and I threw up. But it was not as bad, and it would last about 45 minutes. But it was not as bad as having a bad night drinking, which I have also done, which I think most of us have done as well. I don't think I even can green out anymore. Oh, I definitely can. The dab rig can get me. Yeah. Like the hot, especially from weed, like it goes down. But drinking fucks me up for like a day. Sorry, don't push too hard.
Squirts of the mumbo sauce.
The mumbo sauce. This is a great follow-up for this video. What is this? Doc and Ellis, the LSD No-No by is this a song?
Which I thought was
It's a story? 14 years ago. What? No Moss is the artist James Bladgen proudly presents the animated tale of Doc Ellis's legendary LSD no-hitter. Oh, the base. Oh, no one wants to do a baseball. I like this. Is interesting to me though. Maybe we'll listen to it. Thank you, Obi-Wan. That is interesting. Doc Ellis did LSD and threw no-hitter. I think that makes a little sense.
Really what every law ultimately should be designed to do. Every law ultimately should have the objective of making life better for people. That before you talk about rights and freedoms, like that ultimately is supposed to be the goal.
Shut up then. Then healthcare is objectively okay. If you're going to make this argument, it's objectively better to have healthcare available to 100% of citizens than it is to not have healthcare. If this is your argument, you literally do not agree with yourself. You don't even agree with yourself on this topic. This isn't an argument you would make if someone was sitting in the room with you, because it's indefensible. It's for their well-being. People purport to have well-being when they're high. They like getting high. That's well-being. They like it. People do not talk about weed the way they talk about heroin. No one says, I regret smoking weed. Maybe if they would smoke every single day all the time and they're like, damn, my lungs are fucked up or something. I've just never heard anybody say that. They maybe said they regretted one time when they're like, damn, I just smoked way too much weed. But like, you don't go to rehab for this shit. It doesn't have a stranglehold on people the way these other substances do. If everybody smoked weed instead of cigarettes and alcohol and you know any sort of opiate, we would have a way better world. And then if everybody else had guided therapy with like mushrooms or something, we'd have an even better world.
And if there's a law that's going to make life worse for people, then it's a bad law.
Yeah, I agree, Lucas. Like, it's not just about getting high. Like, a little bit of it's about being fucked up. Like, you're watching a movie, I'm like, I bet this would be even better high. But sometimes it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It helps your creativity. It helps you lock in, especially for me with my ADHD. I like cooking when I'm high. I like listening to music. Like fucking. It's just good, man. It helps. Your brain, I've experienced my brain in its stable state, and I like it. I'm a man. I'm a man that likes my brain. I like my thoughts. But sometimes, I like to alter that shit. And when we're sitting here hanging out, man, it's become part of the show.
Like, that's the number one way that it's a bad law. If it's making life worse. It's really not. It's actually a pretty simple test.
Okay, funding the police makes life worse.
So they're not talking about how safe the schools in Ohio will be after young children with mental disorders are granted even easier access to psychoactive drugs.
Young children with mental disorders. You don't give a fuck. They're not selling weed to kids. What?
Instead, they're talking about tax revenue.
Yep.
They're telling you how much money the state will make.
Don't like money? I can get on board with that.
That's the whole pitch. They're not even pretending otherwise.
I agree. They shouldn't charge for weed. Free weed for everybody. Everybody gets a free weed ration. Not a ton, just like an eighth or something a week. I would burn through that literally so fast.
And that tells you something that even left-wing voters in Oregon are now realizing, which is that the more recreational drugs you legalize, the more crime and urban decay you have to deal with.
Urban decay.
This really should not be a surprise. People are, again, more likely to do something when there is no legal ramification for doing it. That doesn't mean everyone stops doing drugs when you make it illegal. It just means that the fewer obstacles in the way, the fewer consequences, the more of that behavior you get. And so before you legalize drugs, you should ask yourself, is it going to be good for society if more people are doing this? Do we want that? Is that a positive? Is that something we want to? Do we want to facilitate that as voters? And if you answer no to that question, then you don't legalize it.
No, I want to.
And it's not just because of the practical obstacles put in place when something is illegal. It's also because the law is a teacher. As the saying goes, a thing begins to seem less objectionable to people when the law endorses it.
No. Laws are stupid. I don't like laws. I agree that we need to organize society. I do not like the way that the United States decides to carry out law and order. It's oppressive. It doesn't help anybody. It's obfuscative for the undereducated and underfunded individuals. Its laws are essentially formatted to ensure the hegemony of the upper class and their power over us. So yeah, they're all pretty bad. But this is how we try to make them better. We try to chip away at the bad. There's lots of bad, and we're never really going to win the fight, which is kind of the point. Yep. We're never going to have 100% satisfaction in chat or in life. But we can try every day. Tiger Cat, you're the one person... Well, wait, how did you avoid that ad? I don't know. See, Tiger Cat doesn't have ads right now. 98.76%.
That's the problem. And also, there's something else that's been revealed by the decriminalization across the country, especially in Oregon. Mm-hmm. So the other thing that we hear from the libertarian types is that, well, if you could decriminalize drugs, and it just affects the people. When someone decides to do drugs, it just affects them. It just affects their life.
Sort of rambling. Purple Nickel, give one a Tiger Cat. Thank you so much. No more ads. Perfectly cobbed in every way.
Let people do what they want to do with their own lives. Mm-hmm. If they want to poison themselves, doesn't affect anybody else.
Yep.
Okay, well, it's very clear that is not the case. See, it turns out when you've got a bunch of people who are all deciding to poison themselves, mm-hmm. it has an enormous impact on everybody else.
What I'm interested in what impact are you experiencing? That people are addicted to drugs impacts you how?
The breakdown of society actually affects everybody.
So the breakdown of society is due to the late stage capitalism we're sitting in. The reason that those people are on these drugs is because they didn't have the wealth to get out of that situation. They wouldn't have the circumstances to, they didn't have the social network to get out of it. Maybe there's lots of reasons you have it. They just got addicted to their prescription, whatever. It could happen for anybody. And, this is not like the fact that these are commodified things, that they need money to live, and then their living situation reduces when they go down and they don't have anyone to turn to. They can't go get health care. They're scrounging every day just for enough money to take the fucking pain away, literally, because it starts to hurt once you're fucking addicted to this shit and you don't have it. I mean, what would you do if every day your fucking blood's on fire, man? Like, this is how they experience life because of this fucking drug, and they don't have anyone to help them except themselves. And the only way they know how to help themselves is through this. And then the government can't be fucking trusted because every time they experience any sort of interaction with, the bureaucracy that owns them and their lives, they get abused by it. They get mistreated. The cops beat them up. The fucking prisons don't treat them right. The doctors can't treat them, or their bill is too fucking steep. The healthcare isn't free. You go to a clinic and they just give you methadone with no fucking therapy or anywhere to stay or any, what are the people going to do? They don't have any resources. Like, it's a half step, but it's also like a fucking, like, you're not using any compassion. You're not using your fucking brain, because all you think of is, like, this guy fucking mentions, the money is the bad thing earlier, but then when the money comes up and you're like, okay, well, let's not charge for healthcare. Let's not charge for fucking housing. He's like, well, where's the money going to come from? It's like, what do you mean? We have houses, we have healthcare, we have healthcare workers. They're already there. They're already getting paid. They're not individual. They don't get paid by the customer directly. We could just take care of these people. We could take care of everybody. Nope. Got to work for it. Okay, well, these people can't work. They're addicted. Well, then we should fucking just ban the drug. Like, well, we're still going to get the drug, man. This is how it's been working. They're just stupid. I'm sure the waste of water is all about curing through Jesus. I'm done with Matt Walsh. He's just saying, this is, we have 30 seconds before the end of the thing. I guess we can. What are you going to say?
So ultimately, there's no upside for anyone but the state treasury, and also the politicians who desperately need voters to be as stoned and submissive and out of it as possible. Otherwise, if voters aren't high out of their minds, they might realize what these politicians are doing to their communities.
The politicians that are doing shitty things to their communities are the Republicans, and I believe that when you're high, you're pretty acutely. I don't know many stoners who aren't like, holy shit, that's fucked up. Like they all are in like the politics. We all are acutely aware of what's going on. I have never met a stoner in my life that doesn't have a take. Isn't like, hey man, you ever think about this? Like, come on. Stoners don't overlap with leftism at all? Yeah. Leftists and stoners. You ever met your sister? I bet your sister has crazy cool ideas. Gorgon. Your sister, big stoner hours. Hey man, you ever think that like the earth is a cube? Like it's got corners? That's why they say 4 corners of the earth. It's actually like what, fucking 8? 8 corners. It's a cube, dude. Cuber. Any cube heads in chat?